This is Ben Rogan and Daxton Vaughn, the founding fathers, here today on Revolutionary Vibe Waves, where we cover the raddest, radicalist, retroist revolutions of our time.
Our guests here today are Nathan Matthew and Emiliano Zielinski, two of the leading experts in industrial history, exclusively during the time period of 1750 through 1900, and only on the topics of French Revolution and the Meiji Restoration.
It's really nice to be here. I mean, Daxton, I've been a big fan of your stand-up work before you went on to the podcast. I actually saw one of your shows back in '96, I think.
I've been a longer fan. I've been a fan since 700 BC. You were. To me, your content was great back.
Yeah, that's really great that y'all love Daxton and not me. That's fine, I guess. But yeah, my friend Daxton over here doesn't really know much about Meiji Restoration or the French Revolution, but I happen to know a little bit about this. You know, I know that during this time period, revolutions occurred in many parts of the world, right? You know, some prominent revolutions were obviously the ones that y'all stated, which, you know, had many major cultural and social consequences on the countries, right? You know, I may know that the Meiji Restoration was heavily influenced by Westernization, like U.S. coming to to America, or coming to Japan, my bad, to like come and try and convince them to basically, you know, start factories and import goods. And I know that the French Revolution was caused by essentially a dictator, right, who came and like tried to, you know, like not terrorize people, but like, you know, misrepresented the people in government and gave them no power to which led them to reform a democracy, right? Yeah. So can you tell me about some context behind like these revolutions and what kind of led to them?
Well, for the French Revolution, it was mostly based on the ideas of the Enlightenment, which was an intellectual like reform period from in like the 1700s. It mainly centered around inalienable human rights, like life of liberty, property, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And the French people, they heavily, especially like the lower level, like the heads of the third estate, which was the common people per se, and they really they really liked these ideas because it meant that they would. Because currently had no representation in any government. The king and the nobility would just do whatever they want. Yeah. So the people behind the French Revolution, they really liked those ideas because it meant equality and like real government, like that would actually for the good of the people instead of just the good of the nobility. And for the Meiji Restoration, a bunch of like Western countries, like in Europe, like Spain, Portugal, England, France, they went around and colonized a bunch across the world, and you know, they conquered territories and forced people to trade with them. And the Japanese, they saw this, and they knew that in order to survive, they would have to modernize, and so they would be able to compete with them, so they could protect their culture and that kind of stuff.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, Emiliano, our leading expert in the French Revolution. Yeah, would you like to tell us about essentially how the French people were, and their government and society was influenced by this revolution?
Yeah, certainly. So, you know, the French Revolution, which took place in like 1789, 1799, revolted against basically the political and the economic inequalities in French society. And it wasn't a revolt against colonial rule like the American Revolution, but it was a fight waged by the French people against their absolute monarch and the privileges of aristocrats. Oh, okay. See, the revolutionaries executed King Louis the 16th, I think, right? Yeah. 16th. Cool. And his wife Marie Antoinette in 1793. And then the National Assembly set up the Third Estate, quickly turned into a dictatorship led by Maximilien Robespierre, and then Robespierre executed anyone he thought threatened his power during the Reign of Terror, which took place in 1793 and 1794.
Was Antoinette, was she the one that got her head lopped off?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
They all got their heads lopped off.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
Just making that clear.
Guillotine, you know.
Yeah.
big ass. Oh, shit. We can cut that.
We'll cut that. Anyways, you know, the Reign of Terror ended after the National Assembly turned on Robespierre. And then they arrested him, and they executed him in just over a year. and then the authorities issued 16,000 death sentences across France.
Real quick, before we move on to the next segment, I got a quick ad for y'all.
Now, if you likewise want to develop your thinky parts and get all enlightened so that you can get an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May, you might want to check out my AP World Heimler Review Guide. It is the fastest way to study everything you need to know for your classwork and that national exam in May. So get that clicky finger out and check the link in the description. Anyway, I hope it's...
That was it. Make sure to go listen to my boy Heimler's AP World History Review.
So now we have Nathan Matthew over here talking about the Meiji Restoration, the leading expert in the Meiji Restoration. So tell us, how was Japan affected by this restoration?
Well, really, first we got to talk about like what it was. So it's called the Restoration because it was a restoration of the Japanese emperor into power. Because before, like in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, they had the Japanese shogunate, which was like the military ruler. I mean, the emperor was still a thing, but he was more like a ceremonial figure, only for like religious purposes. He didn't have any real power. And then in the mid-1800s, a bunch of people who supported the emperor and didn't like the shogunate overthrew him because they saw that he was like threatening the country against like Western powers because he wasn't doing anything to protect them. And so they overthrew the shogunate and they reinstated the emperor, who enacted a series of social and like cultural and industrial reforms. So like start building factories, start trade with a bunch of other nations, beef up their military, all that kind of stuff, like modern, like just modernizing, like westernization. Right. But at the same time, they were doing it to preserve Japanese culture, because if they didn't have this modern technology, they'd be weaker than all the Western nations, and their culture would be erased. Kind of like how the Native Americans, they didn't have any technology, and they all got wiped out, kind of like that. And so that's basically why they did it. And it brought a bunch of Western elements into Japanese culture, like clothing, arts, and not to mention all the technology, like modern guns, the factory system, all that kind of stuff. It's wild, like just all the stuff that they did. And the reason that we're calling it a revolution is because it just upheaved all of the cultural norms of the time. It got rid of feudalism entirely. It totally reorganized the government system to be like a centralized power around the emperor. It's really interesting.
Very cool. Very cool, very cool. Thank you. Well, now my friend Daxon here, I think it's enough information. Daxon, you think you could sum up for us? So how would you analyze this what we've learned so far?
I think I got it. So basically what happened was... Basically, the French Revolution happened because a lot of people got fed up with their leaders and decided, they wanted to revolt. And that makes sense to me. And then the Meiji Restoration happened because I guess America wanted them to trade, but they didn't want to. So because they didn't want to trade, America got kind of mad at that and decided that they were going to force them to trade. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Well, thank you guys. That was, I think my friend Daxon has learned some very important topics from our history. And that's pretty much wraps up today. Make sure to like and follow, and we'll see you in the next radical, rad, revolutionary, or redonkulous episode. This podcast was sponsored by Heimler's History as an AP World History Study Guide, which will help you get an A in your class and a 5 in your final. Thank you. Oh